guys, hi. Today's Monday, so it's a random video day. I'm gonna do something a bit different. Oh, but first, before I start, thank you so much for all the new subscribers. Thank you for supporting me and following me. We're almost at 100. Hi. Today's gonna be today's video is gonna be a bit different. Today's video is gonna be a true crime video. I love true crime. So we're gonna do a video on that today. So today we're gonna focus on, his full name was Theodore Robert Bundy. So I mean, I'm pretty sure by now everyone knows who Ted Bundy is. If you don't, where have you been? How have you been living? Like, I'm smiling, but it's a serious situation. This man like killed a lot of women. So we're gonna start from the beginning. I had to move location because my bedroom was like, the light was just going. So Mr. Bundy was born in 1946, November 24th, in Burlington, Vermont. I think that's what I said before. If it is, I literally just said that from my ass. So Ted, this is the thing with Ted Bundy. No one saw this coming. Ted was a very charismatic person. He was very sweet to everyone. He was always helping out. Like he had this charm about him that would like pull you in. Like you couldn't, there's nothing you could say about Ted when you first met him. He was just so sweet, so nice. It was just like a friendly neighbor. So Ted, I'm not sure exactly. I don't remember where he lived before. I think he always lived in Washington DC. So Ted met everyone he met. He was able to wrap them around his finger. Like it was just something about him. He was good looking as well, so I'm pretty sure that helped. So there's a lot of people involved in what happened. But most importantly, Ted had you will see why this ties in later, because it's just very strange. Ted met this young woman called Elizabeth Kendall. Now Elizabeth Kendall had a daughter, and she came from a very conservative background. She didn't live in the city. She used to live in the country and the countryside, and she moved to Washington for a fresh start. She moved into the neighborhood. It was quite dodgy. It was a quite dodgy neighborhood, and she was a single mother trying to take care of her child. She went to a bar one night with a friend for dancing, you know how they used to dance back then, and she met Ted. And from her account anyways, she says that they saw each other across the room, and they instantly felt connection. And I'll actually link the documentary that I watched, her documentary as well, because there's a lot of documentaries about Ted, but this documentary was from her point of view. And yeah, I think he approached her and they started talking and they danced for a while. And he said that normally she doesn't do this because she has a daughter. So it wasn't normal for her to bring men back to her home, but she brought Ted and he spent the night. And she recalls waking up and looking for her daughter. So Elizabeth, she was 23, 24 and single mother when she met Ted. So she brought him back to her house, and Molly Kendall, her daughter, was only 2 years old. And now, as I was saying before, she recalls waking up, looking for Molly, and she couldn't find her. And there she was with Ted in the kitchen, having breakfast. And it's just, I'm guessing she had this very overwhelming feeling of happiness looking at that, because she was a single mother. So I suppose that seeing a male positively interacting with your child would make you feel happy in a sense. So from then on, they started dating for a very long time. Ted was in university studying to be a lawyer, and he had made big connections. I'm not gonna like go too deep into it. I'm not documentary. I'm just here telling you. And had made deep connections with people higher up, and he'd go to parties with them, and people always had something positive to say about Ted Bundy, always. Well, until didn't really slip, but they recall people. This woman that Ted worked with, that Ted liked to steal things. He would steal a copier, or he would steal paper from the printing machine, or he'd steal ink from the printing machine, you know, the little ink thingies. Like he would, or one, she said that he did steal was a typewriter. I mean, he felt like he could just take things. And Elizabeth also remembers Ted just going somewhere and stealing clothes. And she also said that he just felt like he could just take things from people. He could just take it. He was entitled to it. And Elizabeth also said that Ted tried to groom them into his higher class lifestyle. He tried to dress them like the rich would dress, and try and fit these little country girls into his sophisticated lifestyle. So essentially, Ted was living this double life where he would come home to his girlfriend, be nice and caring, and when he was away or behind closed doors, he was murdering women. So it's not certain, but people assume that Ted's first murder was when he was 14 years old. A girl called Anne Burr. So Anne had disappeared from her bed in Tacoma in 1961. That's when Ted was 14, and it is known Ted was the paper boy at that time. He did the paper routes, and I'm guessing that was what we know as Ted's first murder. It could have been earlier, we don't know. It's just what we think that was his first murder, because again, Ted didn't confess to all of his murders. Although Ted denied having any involvement in Anne Burr's disappearance, the justice system is pretty sure that he was involved in it, but till the day he died, he didn't confess to it. So we're gonna say allegedly, right? So Ted Bundy's first known sexual attack was in January 1974. He broke into the apartment of a university student called Karen Sparks. I think that's her name. No, I'll put it there. And he beat her and sexually abused her. And Karen was left in a coma for 10 days. Although she was in a coma for 10 days, she did wake up and is now living with permanent disabilities. But luckily, she did escape Ted's attack. Then, only a month later, Ted attacked again. This time, it was fatal for his second victim. She was another student of the University of Washington, Linda Ann Healy. Ted beat her, abducted her, and took her remains to a mountain where he left a lot of his victims. Throughout that year, Ted was still in school, and he would go around and commit many more murders throughout Washington and Colorado. Even though he only admitted to 7 of those murders through Washington and Colorado, it's suspected that he killed many more. In the middle of 1974, Ted met Carol Ann Bone, and he started dating her, even though he was still dating Elizabeth. And the two women knew nothing about each other. Ted was dating 2 women at the same time, and they had no idea. Ted then moved to Utah, where he enrolled in the law university there, and he started attacking again. His first victim was first believed Melissa Smith, who was the daughter of the chief police officer there. But his actual first victim, Nancy Wilkes. He killed Nancy Wilkes just 2 weeks before he killed Melissa. Now, as soon as Ted moved to Utah, women just started disappearing left, right, and center, just disappearing out of nowhere. And honestly, it's so strange. But if I was the police, I would just connect the dots. I know you have to have evidence and stuff, but it's just strange that this one man appears and then all these women are disappearing. Now, November 1974, this was a breakthrough. Ted approached the victim, made up this lie that he was a police officer and that someone tried to break into his car and that he needed help to go to the police station, and the victim agreed and she followed him. That is when Ted made his attack. He got in the car and Ted tried to handcuff her in the car. Things were just going south really quickly, but he made a mistake. Ted only cuffed one of her wrists twice, and because of that she was able to escape his car. And even though Ted didn't know it, she was the one that would put him where he deserved. One of his girlfriends, Elizabeth, his first girlfriend before he got the other one, started to piece things together. She could see that wherever Ted went, there were women missing. So she did what was obviously best and reported him to the police many times. She reported him in August, November, and December. In 1975 was Ted's first arrest. So Ted was driving around and this police officer found it awfully suspicious and stopped him. They found gloves and a ski mask in his car, but obviously they didn't have enough evidence to detain him, so they had to let him go. Although he was out of the police custody, the police were still very suspicious of Ted Bundy, and that girl, the one that was able to escape him, was the one to pick him out of a lineup. And Ted was put in a lineup, and Mr. Runch, was able to spot him and point at him, and she was like, that's him. Now, Ted did try and sell his car, probably to try and deviate the police from knowing it's him, because she obviously knew what his car looked like. But they were able to get his car, and they had the nail in the gun, come on. But once again, Ted was freed. Ted was freed on bail. But in 1976, Ted stood trial for the kidnapping of the Runch. And, thank God, he was found guilty and was made to serve 1 to 15 years in jail in the Utah State Prison. Ted was charged with the crime of murdering Karen Campbell and was transferred from the Utah State Prison in Colorado, where he murdered Karen. Ted was very good with getting his victims. He would put on a smile and be like, oh, could you come in here and help me? Oh, my shoulder hurts. Would you be so kind as to help me? And of course, the lovely ladies would go and help him. But that's how he got them. He would quickly shove them in his car and take them away. Now, Ted liked to play lawyer, and he wasn't very happy with how his case was going. So I don't know how, but the judge allowed Ted to have a part in his case. And honestly, he made quite a laugh of himself, but I don't know how this happened, but in one of Ted's hearings, he was able to escape. As he was playing as his own attorney, Ted asked during recess to go to the library to do some searching, like some research. And Ted jumped out of that window. I don't know why wasn't anyone paying attention to him, but he was able to jump out that window. He did break his ankle in the fall, but he was able to get quite far. He went so far that he was able to get to the woods, and he stayed there for 6 days. 6 days, and no one was able to find Ted. The reason why he was even caught was because he broke into a camp trailer park, I think it was, to steal some supplies, and 2 police officers were there waiting for him, and they took him back to jail. So in the same year, 1977, Ted escaped again. And you're gonna think, again, how can someone escape twice? So Ted went through a hole in the ceiling, and he was able to, I don't know, somehow, like, he knew where he was going. He changed clothes and he literally just walked out of the prison. He walked out and no one, through the front door, and no one noticed it was him until a day later. I mean, I don't know what to say. What were they doing? What the hell's going on? He just walked out. How can someone just walk out of a prison? At the end of 1977, Ted was a free man. He was free. He was able to get around. Hitchhiked and caught a bus. He took a flight to Chicago and then a train to Ann Arbor and made it to Atlanta, and finally he settled, and finally he made it to Tallahassee. Now Ted tried to get a normal job and live a normal life, but I'm guessing that just wasn't enough for him, so he resorted back to his ways of crime. Now this is a murder that is reported a lot when it comes to Ted Bundy. In 1978 was when the famous Chi Omega murders. Ted found a place to stay near the sorority house, and only a week later he broke in, killed 2 women and assaulted 2 more. If that wasn't enough for him, he attacked one more woman after he left the sorority. After killing 2 women, attacking 2 and attacking 1 more after he left. But luckily she survived. And obviously these murders were so big, they were all over the media, everywhere, and Ted felt like the police were closing in on him, so he said he needed to escape. February 12th, he tried to escape, but the police caught him. They stopped him. And you know how? Because the car he had stolen was identified as stolen, and they stopped him and they arrested him again. In 1979, Ted's trial for murder is aired on TV. Now, Ted took this as a chance to put on a show and talk to the reporters and make him seem like a charming guy. This is where it stuck. Ted was convicted of 2 counts of murder, 3 counts of first-degree murder, and 2 counts of burglary. He was given the death penalty for his murders. Now, by this time, everyone knew who Ted was. Everyone. No one could hear Ted and not think Bundy. Now, you're thinking, what about his girlfriend and his parents and whatnot? Although his girlfriend did report him to the police many times, didn't follow up on that, they just couldn't believe that Ted did it. His mom just couldn't believe. She's like, no, he's innocent. His girlfriend, no. It's just, it can't be Ted. He's so sweet, charismatic. Like, yes, he does steal. Yes, he can be a bit arrogant. But murder, like, Bundy, murder, just no. Now, Elizabeth was out of the picture now. And Ted was, in 1980, Ted was on trial again for a second murder. And yet again, he was able to stun the public and get married. There was this law in Florida that if a marriage is proposed in front of a judge, then it's legal. It's officiated. So Ted asked remember he had another girlfriend, Carol Boone, to marry him. And of course, because he did it in front of a judge, it was okay for them to get married. They were married. In the middle of a trial, Ted asked Carol Boone to marry him, and crazily enough, she said yes. She agreed to marry him, and people thought that he was making a spectacle of the judicial system, because Ted was just running around, not physically, but just doing things that people wouldn't do in court. Like, he was just it was as if he was making a mockery of it. Now, Carol Boone was a firm believer that Ted was innocent and he couldn't have done this. Like, his mother and Elizabeth, I think at the end she just knew that he had done it. Elizabeth, not Carol. But she just couldn't believe that he would do it. And then Ted was sentenced again for kidnapping and killing Kimberly Leach. And this is when they sentenced him to the electric chair. Now, there was a lot going on at this time. Carol Boone was pregnant. She gave birth to a daughter she claimed was Ted's. No one really knows for sure, but he was serving time. He was serving time at that time, but she says that they were able to sneak in and do stuff while he was in jail. No one can really clarify that. There's no solid evidence, but she claims that the child was his. Eventually, Carol Boone and Ted fell out, and she refused to talk to him ever again. Even till the day he died, she didn't want to talk to him anymore. No one knows exactly what was said between the two, but they had. In 1984, Ted tried to escape again, but this time the guards had an eye on him, and they saw that he was trying to saw through the window, or the wall of the window, and they found glass, and they relocated him, and Ted didn't try to escape again. Now, Ted, realizing that there was nothing he could do and that he was at the end of his years, he started to confess to his murders. And Ted had this strange thing where he didn't talk about himself in first person. He referred to himself in third person. I don't know exactly why. Maybe it was a narcissism thing, or I don't know. He just talked about himself in third person. So Ted, being a typical serial killer, he took pride in his murders and being suspect to these murders, and he confessed all of them, even ones that the police had no idea that he had even done.
I missed this out, and I thought that it might be important. Not important, but you might want to know. So Ted Bundy did refuse his last meal. He didn't want to have one, but they still gave him a meal of steak, jelly, I think, of some sort. Just, they gave him last meal, though he did refuse it.
January 24th, 1989 was the day of Ted's execution. Now, this was big, huge. All of the media stations were there. Everyone's prepared. People were outside chanting for Ted to be executed. And
Ted's last words were, "I'd like to give my love to my friends and my family." So, even though this guy murdered many women, he seemed to have some sense of compassion for the people close to him and people that he viewed valuable to him in his life. I don't know if this was just an act, but the fact that they did say that when Ted spoke his last words, his voice was quavering, I don't think that he put up an act when he said his last words. I think that generally he did want to send his love to his friends and his family.
At 7:16 a.m, Ted was executed by the electric chair in Florida, and he was pronounced dead. Now, a lot of people had very vicious things to say about Ted, which is called for because he did horrible things. A man like that, and he was so proud of what he did. And although he did have two girlfriends, Carol Boone and Elizabeth, he always claimed to love Elizabeth forever and ever. He wrote letters to her, and she says that there was one letter where he claims love forever and ever. She just said he loved her very much and he would never stop loving her. And of course, I'm pretty sure it was very hard on her, but I'm pretty sure it was also very hard on the victims and the families of the victims. And I'm pretty sure this story, at least it ended with a man paying for the sins that he's committed, even though in some cases I don't really agree with the electric chair or the death penalty in America, the way Americans deal with it, but I'm not part of the judicial system, so I can't really talk about that. But the man was malicious. He shouldn't have killed all those women, and it just shows that you can't always be willing to help strangers all the time. Just help them, but always have one eye open, because if they're anything like Ted, they'll shove you in the back of the car and your body will be shoved in a mountain. And most likely, if they're like Ted, he decapitated a lot of his victims, and a lot of them were Jane Doe's, because you couldn't see who it was. So just be careful out there, and just make sure that whatever you're doing, you always have one eye open and eyes behind the back of your head. Anyways, thank you guys. Thank you so much for watching. This was new. I tried. I like it. Let me see. I'm gonna edit it and see how it is. But thank you so much. If you like the video, smash the subscribe button, like, comment down below, and follow my social medias, and keep watching because I enjoy making videos and I enjoy doing this for you guys. Okay, bye.